When it comes to MMORPGs, some things are just the gospel, and when you try and reinvent the wheel, you're destined to fail. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here, one half of the team behind Legacy Gaming, and today I want to talk about one major decision that could have huge ramifications and potentially doom Riot's new upcoming MMORPG. Now, full disclosure, this is 100% my opinion, but after nearly 2 decades of playing MMORPGs, I like to think I have a decent understanding of what makes the genre so special. What it really comes down to is that first word in the title, massive. In the case of MMORPGs, that massive could mean a few different things. A massive player base, a massive amount of money invested, a massive team developing the game. The word can fit a number of different scenarios, but today I want to focus on one thing in particular: a massive world. World building is an art, one that we talked about a bit in our last video, go check that one out. Riot Games has been crafting Runeterra, the League of Legends universe, for decades, and it shows. From character breakdowns to vivid artwork of the various regions, the world is slowly coming to life. All of these things take time, money, and creativity to create, but if Riot Games wants to truly capitalize on the world they've created, they have to avoid one major pitfall. It's no secret that the company behind games like Legends of Runeterra, Teamfight Tactics, and League of Legends is comfortable with a top-down perspective when it comes to their game design. But if they stay within their comfort zone and create a top-down MMORPG, I truly believe the game will never reach its full potential, and let me explain why. It really all comes back to that word, massive. A massive multiplayer online game needs a massive world for players to explore. And I'm not just talking about size. Players need to experience the massiveness with their own 2 eyes. Think back to some of your favorite RPGs throughout the years of playing video games. I'm sure there is at least one moment where you looked out over a horizon and were floored at the world you were currently exploring. I know I've had that experience countless times in a number of different games and genres. Riot is well on their way to creating that new massive world. 11 regions have already been established in Runeterra, and through cinematics, artworks, new books, and other creative forms, we've already begun visualizing what that world will look like. But if Riot decides to stick with what they know best, a top-down perspective, they will, in my opinion, be shooting themselves in the foot and robbing fans of potentially the next great world. Now, there is an argument to be made for a top-down style MMO. Just look at Corepunk, an up-and-coming MMORPG set in a similar fantasy environment. The team behind the game, Artificial Core, chose to pursue a top-down perspective, which gives them the flexibility to design certain systems certain ways. For example, you never have to worry about draw distance, since what you see on the screen is always going to be consistent. There's also a fog of war element and your character's field of vision to consider, amongst other things. One decision to design a game that players experience from the top down dictates everything, from the way players control their character to how they view the world, and while it will work technically, I don't believe it'll captivate fans the way more traditional MMORPGs have done in the past. I can't remember a time I was playing a top-down game that was truly floored with the world I was experiencing. Even games like Hades, which are universally praised as masterpieces, feel limited. That's not to say top-down worlds can't be immersive and gorgeous, but when you try and compare it against a fully realized 3D world, well, it's almost unfair. Riot's knack for top-down games may be their undoing, but if the team is smart, they'll opt to push beyond their comfort zone and focus on developing a game in the third person, opening up their massive world to be explored in a more grandiose way. Now, there is no doubt that a third-person game is more challenging to develop than a top-down game. That's just fact. You're adding a whole new dimension into the mix, and while top-down games do have some semblance of verticality, in a third-person game you move in every direction, over, under, around the world, while in a top-down game you're really just moving horizontally over it. Movement aside, the Riot team has spent decades building up the world of Runeterra, and while it still is a fledgling universe with no real connective tissue to keep it all together, players that experience it from a top-down perspective will never truly get the full breadth of the world. Again, think back to those specific moments we talked about earlier. For me, it was walking into Stormwind City my very first time. The massive stone archways, the looming statues of heroes past, it was an awe-inspiring moment. Now imagine that moment from a top-down perspective. It doesn't quite have the same effect, right? The reason is the restriction on our field of vision, and while many may not see that as a big deal, I know in my heart of hearts that it is. You can only truly appreciate the scale and scope of something when you see it in its entirety, and it becomes more relatable, more human even, if you see it with your own eyes as if you were there. MMOs are about scale as much as they are about substance, which is why I'm so fixated on the word massive. But if Riot does choose to rest on their laurels and develop a game from a perspective they're comfortable with, that massive scale becomes so much less so. There's also another factor to consider here, and that's the social element of MMORPGs. This genre is designed to support large amounts of players congregating in communal spaces. Places like Ironforge and Orgrimmar hold special value for me because I spent hours meeting friends there, showing off my gear, going to auction houses. The list goes on and on. It felt personal because I was seeing their characters and their experiences from my own character's perspective. Flip that to a top-down view and you're removing the entire element of human connectivity. Sure, you're still sharing the same space, but you're now viewing it in a completely different way, a more sterile way. One's not right while the other is wrong, but one allows you to fully experience the world around you. Now, you may think this is all bullshit, and that's totally fine. This is more about game psychology than anything else. Like I said before, technically a top-down MMORPG will work just fine. But if Riot does truly want to captivate a new audience and bring fans into a new world that's meticulously created, there's only one perspective that will work. Look, I have no doubt in my mind that people will disagree with me, especially players who are used to the types of games that Riot is known for developing, but after nearly 2 decades playing MMORPGs, I know that perspective matters, but feel free to change my mind. What perspective do you think would be best for Riot's new MMORPG? And feel free to go into details. With this game just being announced, we've got a long road ahead of us when it comes to new information, but we'll be here for you every step of the way. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do consider hitting that thumbs up and of course subscribing. It's totally free for you and really helps out the channel. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching and play on.